Okay, we'll go ahead and kick off for the folks who are here. And obviously it's being recorded, so several people they'll get the recording of it. But for those of you who are on time, I'm not gonna make you wait. So I appreciate everybody joining today. If you don't know me, I'm Stephen Meadows. I'll give a little bit of background in just a moment, but this is the first of hopefully many in my brokerage growth series. This one is titled The Pitfalls of Status Quo. So today we'll have a conversation about a couple different topics, but I'll dive right in and we'll go through the agenda and a little bit about me and all that good stuff. And feel free to jump in. And if you've got questions, you can put them in the chat or you can just unmute and ask. I want this to be interactive, not just me talking. So I definitely want to have a conversation. So let me see if I can do this. That doesn't work. Do it this way. All right. So just a quick disclaimer. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
So a quick disclaimer for antitrust reasons, we will not be talking about commissions and like
we'll go through lunch or something.
If I've got to use that, I will try to say like apples or I don't have to tell you guys. You know what we're allowed to talk about and what we're not. So nobody get me in trouble, okay? So if you do not know who I am, my name is Stephen Meadows, and I am I'm a very passionate individual. So a lot of you folks on here have dealt with me in the past. Thank you for still coming back. I've been in the business for 23 years. I started literally the week after I got out of high school. So when people joke around, oh, you must have gotten when you're 18. I actually was 18. It was 23 years in the business. I was actually trained by CB Corporate. So there was a time where I worked for the brand. I was a brand ambassador and then I was franchise development. So actually several of my brokers are on here that I got to work with over the years. So thank you guys for coming. I currently run one of the top 25 Coldwell Banker affiliates in the country in the Mid-Atlantic. We're Coldwell Banker Premier. I'm the Chief Operating Officer. I was brought over almost 5 years ago to help grow the company. And in 5 years, we went from 5 offices in 2 states to 16 offices in 5 states as of today. It'll be a different story by the end of the year, wink, wink. We don't do status quo at Coldwell Banker Premier. So we're always on a growth path. So we're about 13 million in GCI right now. Our next goal is $1 billion in sales. Which would take us to about 25 million in GCI. So I've got my work cut out for me. I gotta double us again, or my boss will be disappointed. So I love what I do. I've also done a lot of M&As. So apart from being an operations person, I'm also mergers and acquisitions. I do all of our mergers and acquisitions, and then I also help a limited number of folks because I don't have a ton of extra time. But I do work on mergers and acquisitions for folks, both buying and selling, but mostly I'm on the buyer side. I really enjoy helping companies acquire other companies as a part of their growth strategy. But I do also enjoy working with sellers. But there are folks out there that are better equipped. I won't name names. Mark Lukes, Rima. They're great at seller side representation. So not saying I can't do it, but I will also bow to a superior skill when I see one. So Rima is a great company, so I appreciate them being on here too. And they're also good if you're looking to buy too. So they have their list of folks who want to sell. That's actually how I hooked up with them is I'm working with Petter in our area to try to find us some folks to purchase. So they're a great company. Anyway, enough talking about them. I want to talk about us. So when we talk about growth, most people think I'm just talking about making a bigger company. That's not necessarily what I mean. Growth has a different meaning for a lot of people. So before you throw out growth, like, oh, I don't want to grow, because believe it or not, I've talked to people who say that. You guys on the call are likely not feeling that way or else you wouldn't be here. But I've talked to a lot of brokerages actually that you'll say like, well, what's your growth strategy? Oh, I can't grow. I don't have time. I've got enough agents. I've got my 16 or 17 agents and that's all I can handle. And I'm not interested in growing. Well, maybe you're not interested in growing your agent count, but what if you're growing your market share or something like that? So I want to talk about these metrics a little bit so we can talk in terms of picking the style of growth that you want. Because as the title of the webinar suggests, status quo is not usually a good thing. Staying in the same place in this business is a good way to go out of business. So for those of you who are not familiar with these terms, I'll go through them fairly quickly, but if you have questions, let's talk about them. Market share, when I say that, what I mean is basically your piece of the pie in a given market. So, if you're looking at a zip code and you want to know what your sales volume market share is, it's basically how much sold that in that period, a month, a year, whatever, divided by how much you sold. So if $100 million sold and you sold $1 million, you have a 1% market share. Same thing on units. If 100 units sold and you sold 10 units, you have a 10% market share. A lot of companies will look at market share as a kind of a barometer of how they're doing. We're definitely very focused on market share. It's more from a brand perspective. Our brand, Coldwell Banker, looks at market share, and that's how they make some certain decisions on territories and things. So not to get into the weeds on that, but we look every month at our rolling 12 market share. So I look at where we are for the last 12 months every month, and I compare it year over year. So I can tell my managers we're going up, we're going down. Another cool thing with market share is, a lot of us are out here saying, oh, the market's terrible. Oh, the market's just, it's so bad. Okay, well, but how down is the market? And how down are you? Or how up are you? Or how up is the market? It's all about how you are doing in comparison. If your market share is going up, that's good. Even if the market is bad, if your market share is increasing, that means you're doing more business than your competitors. So it's good to watch the market share, because you may look at numbers on a screen and go, man, this sucks. Like we're terrible. Like we had what I would say is a meh September. It was okay. It was better than August. But when I looked at the numbers, I'm like, we've had worse months, but we could have done better. But then when I looked at our market share, almost every region increased its market share. And so there was a lot of green on my spreadsheet. So that was great. That meant we had a good September, objectively speaking. Maybe not revenue speaking, but in every other sense of the word, September was a great month. So looking at these metrics from that perspective can help you sort of guide the ship. Like, okay, I'm trying to get more market share. That will dictate who you recruit, who you let go, what companies you might be targeting for acquisition. So market share can be that kind of that North Star. That's what we use it for. Per person productivity is another simple calculation. It's the number of deals divided by the number of agents. So 100 deals, 10 agents, that's a PPP of 10, per person productivity. It's a simple division. It kind of hides the numbers a little bit. I look more for per person, what do they call it? What do we say? Per producing agent productivity. So we take out the zeros. Some people even take out the ones. And what I mean by that is those agents that do one deal a year. I take out everybody that's done 0 deals in 12 months, and then I look at the PPP. It gives you a better feel of how you're doing. But if you're going to compare that for marketing reasons, you have to do the same calculation for your competitors. So just keep that in mind. You can't say, oh, I've got a PPP of 12. Keller Williams has only got a PPP of 1, but you left all their zeros in. That's not fair. But PPP is important. I won't get into positive base, but I know Margie and Chris watch their positive base very closely. That's a different calculation where you're actually looking at the percentage of agents that participated in business. That to me is a great way to see how your productivity is going. So, I said I wasn't going to get into it, so I won't. But if you want to know more about positive base, just reach out. I'm happy to explain it. Retained company dollar. If you're not focused on your retained company dollar, I'm not sure why you're even looking at a financial statement. Some people may call it a gross income or gross revenue or gross profit. I call it retained company dollar. It is defined in my world as gross commission minus referrals, minus any royalties or brand fees or anything you may have to pay, minus the agent's pay. So it's anything that the company has left over to pay all the bills. When I look at an earnout for an M&A, retained dollar is usually what I'm basing something like that on, because it's a very fair number to look at. One party can control the gross and one party can control the net profit, but the company dollar is kind of a mix of everything. How are you recruiting really high producing or high commission split agents? That'll throw your company dollar off. We all know lower producing agents have a higher split or have a better company split. So therefore the retained dollar is going to be better on the lower producers. So the 2 to 4 million makes that sweet spot because of the retained company dollar. So I look at that as a picture of the strength of a company. So if I'm looking at levers that I can pull, I'm focusing on trying to get that company dollar up. So I'm trying to recruit agents that are in that sweet spot. I'm trying to keep the commission splits under control so we're not giving everything away. One thing that you will want to pay attention to as you're focusing on your growth is if you see certain months where, like, let's say or let's say the market fires back up again, like it did during COVID. Our sales went through the roof, but our retained company dollar was relatively flat. They didn't go together. One kind of stayed in, one went up. So what we found was almost all of the major production was being done by our top split agents. And I think you guys know what I'm talking about. It's like all the top producers are bringing in the revenue. Awesome. We're getting the market share. We're getting the sales, but we're not keeping any of the money or very much of it. So from a growth perspective, it wasn't awesome. We increased certain things, but we didn't really make any more money. So that is an important thing to keep watching. Gross commission, that's an easy one. That's just the revenue. If you want to grow, you probably are going to have to raise your revenue at some point. You can't keep paying the bills without stuff coming in the door. Average commission is something a lot of companies are not paying attention to right now. And I think it's a mistake, especially with all the decoupling going on in the industry. My theory is that the listing side average commission is going to go up a little bit, and the buyer side is probably going to go down. Listing agents are going to be able to hold their own when they're at those listing appointments because they're not having to squabble over comp or over the other half of the commission. It's my fee is X, period. Now, what do you want to pay the other side if they ask or whatever? So we're already seeing our agents are actually getting a much higher average listing side commission, but then we're seeing it plummeting for untrained agents on the other side. So when you're thinking about growth, a typical broker may not think of that as a growth strategy, but you absolutely have got to protect your average commission. If that's all you do, you're doing something. So definitely keep an eye on your average commission. I watch it every month and I watch it year over year. How was it in September? How was it in last September? Are we seeing it drop? Are we seeing it balance? Whatever. And then there's ancillary revenue. I count ancillary as pretty much anything that's not direct real estate sales. So property management, mortgage title, insurance, maintenance, whatever. Anything that your company is able to do to generate revenue outside of a real estate transaction is ancillary revenue. And if you're not in the ancillary world, it might be something you should consider at some point. Some companies haven't reached kind of that threshold yet where they're like, I feel like I'm big enough to do it. But anybody can kind of get into some kind of an ancillary service. I'll just tell you really quickly on our lead generation. We have an internal lead gen team. If I can get mortgage and title on the same closing, I actually make as much or more on mortgage and title as I do on the broker commission on the lead gen. So it doubles our company dollar essentially. So the numbers can change drastically if you've got some ancillary money you can throw into the mix. Okay, I did a lot of talking there. Any questions or discussion about any of these metrics? Do you disagree with any of them? Are there things that you're tracking that I didn't mention? How are you guys looking at growth from your brokerage perspective? Who wants to be the brave one?
Stephen, that's Rich. I'm curious, do you can you make available, even for a fee, your Excel spreadsheet? So in my case, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I absolutely can do that. And luckily for you, it'll probably have most of the same metrics because we're pulling it from the same place. So yeah, I can certainly share it too for you. I can warn you though, you're probably gonna want somebody else to plug the numbers in because it's very robust.
Okay.
Yeah, I have it. I break our stuff down by office, and I mean it's a huge spreadsheet, but it tells me everything I want to know. And your managers are starting to find it helpful too. So I don't really get into this in this presentation, but I will tell you, if you have managers, you have to involve them in these types of discussions. They need to know what metrics you're tracking. They need to know what they're going to be held accountable for. So if you're worried about retained dollar, then you need to make sure your managers know when they're recruiting people that they're not going to the top level every time and trying to give everything away. And then you understand why those mechanics work that way. So just a little tidbit. Any other questions, comments before we move on? All right. So now we've talked about types of growth, or the metrics you can look at. Now I want to talk about a couple of ways to grow. And I lump these into basically three buckets: recruiting and retention, increasing productivity, and mergers and acquisitions. They all basically do the same thing as far as raising the revenue or whatever, but your strategy will be dictated by the type of growth you're looking for. So if you're over here going, I think I just want to focus on per person productivity, well, then you're going to put most of your effort into the increasing productivity category and maybe in the recruiting retention category, but mostly in just raising the people that you have currently. So we're going to look at each of these buckets and just kind of evaluate them one by one. So first of all, everybody loves recruiting, right? It's my favorite thing to do in the whole wide world. I hate it, actually. I'll just be honest. I don't like recruiting. I have a recruiter. She's a weirdo. She actually enjoys it. And she knows I call her a weirdo, so it's fine. She loves it. I can't stand recruiting, but it's necessary. Recruiting and retention is extremely important. And I would argue that retention is becoming more important than recruiting. I won't say it's easy to get new agents, but it's a lot easier than getting experienced agents. But it costs a lot more to hire a new agent than it does to keep an existing one. It's just like employees. So if you're not working on retention, you're probably it's like trying to fill a bathtub without plugging the drain. You've got to focus on your retention. But brokers who are not recruiting or retaining their agents are destined to fail. It's just the way it is. There are common excuses. I'm sure nobody here has ever used any of these, but what I hear when I'm talking to brokers, I'm too busy to recruit. Or my favorite one, well, there's nobody out there that I want. I know all the agents in my market and I have the 5 that I want. Okay, gotcha. That's just an excuse. I can't compete. I'm up against this company, that company, this brokerage, this 100% model. I can't compete, so I'm not even going to try. I don't have time to train my agents. I had a broker tell me that the other day. Oh, I don't want to grow. I don't have time to train those agents. Okay. Or if people want to come, they come to me. I've never had to recruit at all. Everyone that works for my company has always just knocked on my door and come in. I don't believe you, but whatever. I don't have the evidence against that, so I'll pretend like that's okay. That's a real thing that happens. So some factors to consider when you're looking at recruiting and retention is you want to look at your agent mix, and that's really important because we've already talked about the difference in the company dollar between the top producer and a mid-level producer. And you consider, I don't know, obviously what everybody's comp plans are, but the industry average is like a 70-30 split. So let's say you've got newer agents at a 70-30, but then you have your top producers at a cap or 90-10 or something. That's a big difference. 20% may not seem like much, but it's a lot. So you don't want to have too many people in one category. You don't want too many new but you also don't want to have no new agents because it's like an escalator. They're going to get off at the top. And if you don't have anybody coming up the bottom of the escalator, eventually your escalator is going to be empty. Agents age out of the business, they retire, they move away, they die, they get married, they have babies, they wake up one day and decide they want to start a, hair salon. I don't know, whatever. They're going to leave. Agents will just leave. Attrition happens. I think we're heading toward a major purge right now. And I don't know that if anybody disagrees with that, I would love to hear your perspective. But I really think that the signals are all pointing toward a bunch of agents leaving the business. We've already seen it on the loan side. It was like, gosh, I forgot the stat. It was like a third of the loan officers in the country got out of the business or something ridiculous. If anybody knows the stat, please jump in. We're coming up on board renewals at the end of the year. For most boards, it's annual. I'm wondering how many people are going to be renewing. Different states renew at different times. So like, for instance, West Virginia renews in July. For July 1st, everybody has to have their license. It's amazing how many people, you'll see them just drop mid-year because they're like, well, I'm not going to pay the licensing fee, so I'm just going to get out of it. So I feel like over the next 12 months, we're going to see people just cycling out of the business, which is a good thing overall. When you consider you have over 2 million practitioners and about 1.6 realtors in the country. What were the units last year? Like 4 million units. I mean, it's like less than 3 deals a person. Nobody can make any money on that. So if we can get some of the onesie twosie folks in referral status or something like that cleared out, that's more transactions for everybody else. So I think it's a good thing, but you do want to make sure you're paying attention. You always want to have a few people coming up that you can train to take the space that the others are going to leave. But you also want to look at your quartiling. You don't want everybody, you want to be top heavy and have everybody at, a 90-10 or something like that. But you also don't want to have everybody below $1 million. You want to have some balance in that. Agent specialty. When you're looking at a nice, healthy company, if you specialize in commercial, you want to have some commercial agents. If you do new construction or whatever, if you're straight up residential, then you don't have to worry about the specialties. But you want to have a mix. Even in residential, you want to have some land specialists and some, this is a luxury person or whatever. And then the agent focus: buyers, listings, leasing. I know there's people out there that are like, oh, I love buyers. One of my agents just was in a few minutes ago, and he's one that he hates listings, absolutely hates taking listings, only wants to work with buyers. That is the opposite of me and most people I know. I did foreclosures for 8 years, wouldn't work with a buyer. I'm listing only, I'm not doing buyers. And frankly, if you've got a very buyer heavy agent roster, you probably should look at retraining them, because the buyer's agents are going to have a hard row to hoe as we get used to this new cycle, this new industry. They don't know how to defend themselves. They don't know how to ask for their commission. They're not great at it. And a lot of them are just going to get frustrated. I got one agent, she's done a couple of deals and we didn't even know about it until they closed, unfortunately, but she was taking one apple on the buyer side because she didn't know how to talk about her value. It's like, oh, so you want to make sure that you've got agents focusing on both. I mean, obviously you need buyer's agents as well, but if you don't have agents bringing in listings, it's like having a shoe store with no shoes. So I would focus very heavily on finding agents that want to do listings or that already have listings or that are good at getting listings that you can recruit, because you need listing agents. If you haven't gotten into property management, it may be something to consider. A lot of people are scared of property management. If you can get it to scale, it's incredibly profitable. And it's a great way to grow the business because it helps give you some stability through the downtimes, but it also is a book of business. So you've got owners, they might want to invest. If they want to sell the property, now they're going to come to you. Your tenants eventually might want to buy a house. So there's a bunch of different transactions you can pull out of property management. We manage about 1,000 properties. Most people don't do that many. It's a couple hundred. So don't freak out. You don't have to do 1,000 to make it work. But you'd be amazed at what property management can do to your business. A couple of takeaways for recruiting, and we can open it up for some discussion if you guys have comments. Feed that escalator. You've got to keep somebody, I don't care if it's one or two people a year, you've got to have new people coming in the bottom and raise them up. Or else, like I said, you're going to end up with an empty escalator one day. They'll get, they get to the top of the escalator and it's like, oh, do I want to start my own brokerage? Because, we all know opening a brokerage is super easy and we make all the money. So every agent wants to have their own company. Or do I retire? Whatever. Leverage mentors in your company to help train the agents. If you are one of those brokers that's like, I don't have time. I don't want to, I don't like to, I don't have time, whatever those excuses, those reasons are for not training agents. Well, if you don't go out and hire somebody that'll do it, work with mentors in your company. We have a great mentorship program and both sides benefit greatly from it. I have an agent who would take her mentor or her mentee with her on listing appointments. She would ask the seller, do you mind? I'm a mentor at my company. Do you mind if I bring an agent that I'm helping to train? Ooh, wow, how impressive. They think that she is something special. She is, but she's able to use it to her advantage, and it's really kind of cool. So it's not just I'm giving up my time. She's getting benefit and, a little bit of money. We tell the mentors, you're not going to get rich off of this, but you would be amazed at how much of a lift a mentor can be to your training. Because it's that hands-on training that takes all the time. It's here, go out and show them how to do an open house. Take them on a listing appointment. I'll sit with them and do a CMA or whatever, but I don't have time to run them all over town and follow them around and wipe their nose. The mentor can do that, and it's on-the-job training. And then when it comes to recruiting, price is an issue in the absence of value. So if you're constantly competing for split and you cannot figure out, I can't, they never say yes, I don't know what it is. It's your value. It's not your price. It's your value. You're not giving them enough of a reason to justify what you're asking for them to pay for. I'll let you guys know. We've got agents that start with us at 50-50 still. So it's not impossible. I'm not saying I love that. I mean, would I love to be able to give everybody a super high split and, have 1,000 agents? Sure, I guess, if it was going to make my metrics be okay. If it's going to screw up my numbers, I don't want them. So consider that, look at your value proposition before you start cutting your commissions. Like, instead of going racing to the bottom, figure out what it is that you can offer that has that value, that stickiness that those agents are craving. Any thoughts or questions or anything on recruiting and retention? I know we talk about this a lot. So,
Stephen, mentorship, you mentioned they make a little something. How do you finance the mentorship program?
So we've done it two different ways. The first way, the first iteration was it came out of the company dollar. And it worked because it was only the agents that were like brand new to the business at 50-50. And so I had company dollar I could do. Well, now, we've got offices all over and I've got people at all sorts of different, levels and stuff. And it's not fair for one mentor to make X percent off of 50. And this other mentor has to make the same percentage off of 30. And so we changed it. We hired a lady that used to work at a competing brokerage, and they had a mentorship program, and she was telling us what they did. And then we had another manager that used to work for Coldwell Realty, and both of those companies, the other one was very large too. I won't name names though. Those had a fee to the agent. I was resistant to that idea, but the concept is skin in the game. We're giving them all of this stuff. This mentor is going to be there hand holding all the stuff. So we actually will charge them, I think it's 25% on their first 3 deals, but 5% of that goes into a bucket for like lead gen programs and stuff like that for those specific people. So we take a little bit of the money and we might buy these leads or pay for this marketing or something. It's going well. The mentors are really excited about it. They like the idea of being useful, spreading their knowledge. I was surprised at how many of them actually were enthusiastic about it. Some of them were like, I guess I'll do it. It's fine. And others, they crave it. They don't want to be a manager. They don't want, but they wouldn't mind helping out a little bit. So it's a great program.
So Stephen, the mentor is getting 20 and 5% is generating leads for the agents being mentored.
Correct. Yes. So we'll use that fund. And the program director is our regional VP, and he's very, very experienced and all that. So I'm basically letting him decide how he wants to allocate the funds.
So any pushback from the mentored agents about the 25%?
Yeah, they don't love it. But they see the value. They're like, that's a little bit of a bite, but okay, I guess, because we sell it as, you are going to get these deals faster and close them more smoothly than you would on your own. So it's a benefit. And it's mostly brand new agents, so they don't really know any better. They're like, yeah, get me trained and get money in my pocket. And that's kind of how we sell it is, look, we can let you do your own thing and flounder around for 9 months and not sell anything, or we can do this program and hopefully you'll have, our goal is to have a deal at least under contract within 60 days of when they're onboarded, if less, if we can get it. So this is our way of saying we're going to get you ramped up quickly and get money in your pocket, because that's the danger zone. When you have those new agents that haven't gotten their first deal yet, they could leave at any time. They're just shelling out money left and right and not making anything. So the faster we can get production, the better.
Thank you.
Any other comments before we jump forward? All right. So let's talk about increasing productivity. I know we always say, oh, there's enough business for everybody. Well, the truth of the matter is when it comes to productivity and market share, the pie is the pie. The pie is how many transactions are done. That's all there is. So there's only so much pie. It's only so big. So how can you get a bigger piece? That's the question. It's not this. I don't want us to have that mentality of what do they call it? Not lack, but whatever. It'll come. The word will come to me. But it's not that I want us to have this, oh no, there's no business, but it's, okay, I'm competing. This is a competition. We're in sales. We're all competing for the same business. How do I get it? There's reasons that agents struggle with this. No accountability. Agents will say they don't need, I don't need accountability. Yes, they do. Everybody needs accountability. Even I do. Lack of driver motivation. That kind of goes to accountability a little bit, but you can hold them accountable, but if they're not willing to get off the couch, that's not going to do any good. They're untrained in how to get their own business. I call it business development. So they don't know how to ask for the business. They don't know how to farm their sphere. They don't even know how to build a sphere or what. We'll tell them, bring us your sphere of influence. What's that? We have to literally explain, like, it's basically anybody that knows you by face and name. It's Frank, it's friends, relatives, all that. They are too reliant on paid leads. I'm sorry, Cameron, close your ears. I know your team does a lot of paid leads, and I love paid leads. Hey, like I said, I have a very large, heavily monetized lead gen team that we are, by the end of the month, we'll be at $40 million sales volume for the year for that team, which is pretty incredible in the rural markets that we operate. But we have a rule in our company that no more than a third of your business should be coming from the company. So from company generated leads, I don't want a bunch of baby birds. I don't want to have to throw up in everyone's mouth every day. Sorry if that sounds cruel or crude. But that's what it feels like sometimes. It's like, I need more business. More business. How about I teach you how to go get business? How about that? That's one of the things that we really focus on. And I think solid brokerages do focus on that business building aspect. But if you leave them too reliant on paid leads, then they'll never figure out how to go get their own business. And here's the struggle. You might say, well, what do I care as long as they're bringing the business in? The problem is a lot of these programs are referral fee programs. So you're paying 35 to sometimes 41, 42%. That's coming out of your end too. you have to split that. That comes off the top, and then you get to split with the agent. So they're taking money out of your pocket when they do a referral. So if you're not teaching them to go get their own business, everything they do is going to be at a discounted commission. So keep that in mind. It's an incentive for the brokerage to teach that to their agents. Again, that's growth. You may say, I don't want to grow. Something that simple, just changing your monetization, that's growth. You're going to grow your retained company dollar that way. Last reason is they don't have an example to follow. There's nobody that's showing them how to do it. And that's where I feel like the mentor program or brokers, if you are an active agent and I don't want to say competing broker, but if you're out there selling, they need to see that you're doing the same activities. I tell my managers, our managers are technically non-competing managers. They can only do their own sphere of influence. But I tell my manager, if you're doing your recruiting calls, I want you to put a note on your door, close it, and let them know that you're prospecting. And the reason I want you to do that is because they need to see that you're prospecting, because you're telling them to prospect. And if they see you're doing it, then they know the next time you tell them to, all right, I'm not asking you to do anything that I wouldn't do myself. That sends a message. So they need a good example, whether it's prospecting, whether it's, farming their sphere, whether it's door knocking, I don't care. Somebody needs to show the other agents how it's done. Some factors you can consider in this is work with them individually to build a plan and hold them accountable. You have to do the last part. I know we're in business planning season right now. If you're not asking them, can I hold you accountable, or how would you like me to hold you accountable, then that business plan is useless. If you're not holding them accountable, then you need to find out if somebody else is, because it's not going to happen. I can guarantee it. You will have a few agents that are self-motivated, and that's great, but the majority they're not. Minimum production standards, that is a somewhat controversial topic. It's come up more and more lately. It's not a policy that we have adopted yet in our company, but essentially a minimum production standards, it means if you don't do at least this many deals in a year, you're out. You're done. You're in referral status or bless and release. This obviously is not a good fit for you. Maybe real estate's not a good place. Generally, I hear 3 deals as a good minimum standard, 3 to 6. 3 is kind of the bare minimum I've heard. There are companies out there that will not hire anybody that's done less than 12 deals in a year. Like, if you're doing less than 1 a month, I don't want you. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being picky. As long as you're not being picky just so you have an excuse to not recruit. I can't find anybody that meets my standards. Well, your standards are too high. But it sends a message to the agents that we hire professionals in this company. And if you want to be here, you need to come to training and you need to do the things that make you a professional, or else then we may invite you to go somewhere else that is going to be a better fit for your personality. So I'm not suggesting that everybody go out and adopt production standards, but it is a topic that is gaining more traction in the industry right now. And then you want to nurture the agents that have the real potential. You'll know them. I feel like after you're in the business for so long, you can sort of spot who's going to be good. We all have our wrong moments, but I tell my managers all the time, they'll call me up. Oh, I've got this new recruit. I said, let me guess. They're a rock star. They're going to light the world on fire. They're going to be the next top producer. Yeah. I've heard it all before. Call me in 2 years after we've hired them and let me see what they can do. Then I'll believe it. I'm not saying they don't have potential. I'm not saying that at all. But if I had a dime for every time one of my managers told me someone was going to light the world on fire, I could probably not have to work here anymore. We just can never tell who's going to be amazing when we hire them. I know we all know stories of that. Oh my gosh, that person walked in and they were a train wreck and they ended up being my best agent. So find those agents that actually have what it takes and are willing to put in the work, and then help them. They will eat it up. A couple of takeaways: lead by example, as I mentioned. Leverage your mentors again. Common theme. If you want to get your productivity up, rely on the people who are already doing the production to help raise the standard. And just that common thing to remember: you can lead a horse to water. don't beat yourself up if you bring on agents and you just can't get them to produce. That's kind of where the minimum standards come in. I didn't say this before, but the reason the minimum standards become important is when you're looking at this from like a time investment standpoint. Your fourth quartile agents will take up probably 50 to 60% of your management time. So the more people you have at the bottom, you or your managers are going to be spending all your time babysitting and nose wiping and doing all this stuff for agents who are never producing anything. And the folks at the top, they don't necessarily need you, but they'd like to know that you care. But you're too busy fooling around with these young agents or these new agents, and you don't have time for me anymore. Everybody has egos, everybody has personalities, so you have to balance it. But don't keep banging your head against the wall if these agents aren't cutting it. It's, that's what we have referral programs for. That's what we have all these other, there's plenty of other places they can go to save you time and money. And then finally, we're going to talk about mergers and acquisitions really quickly. So this obviously is the fastest way to grow in big chunks. And honestly, M&A should be considered as a natural part of your business life cycle. I think, Mark, I think you and I even talked about this on LinkedIn or something in some comments. If you're a company and you're thinking about selling or something, it's okay. Like, you don't have to feel bad. Like, Mark, maybe you want to speak to this really quickly. You guys work with the sellers more. Like,
yeah,
you should be proud,
Yeah, I mean, hopefully you can hear me. Yeah, I mean, look, the sellers, everybody comes to a crossroads and it's such a cliche, but a lot of business owners do come to a crossroads whereby they have to make a choice. There are a lot of reasons why those choices happen. Maybe they want to age out. Maybe they just don't want to do the business. I mean, just like an agent, brokers and associate brokers and whomever, the owners want to make that choice. There's nothing wrong with any of those. It's a matter of doing it correctly so that you can maximize your value of what you've built. And it's a lot less, to Stephen's earlier point, looking at your agents, looking at your margins and your all of your data. That's what's going to make a merger and acquisition, either way, whether it's selling or buying, successful or unsuccessful. So
absolutely. Thank you. That's great. Yeah. I'm trying to destigmatize, I got to sell my company or I want to sell my company. Good for you. That's awesome. I think that's something that should be celebrated. Yes, there are times when it's a fire sale, but it doesn't mean that, you have to hang your head in shame. M&A can be a natural part of the business cycle. So there's some reasons that owners tend to avoid it. Either it's pride or shame. Either it's, my company's way too special, or, whatever. Or it's, I'm so embarrassed. I just had one today. It was basically, what he basically said was, as soon as I found out how companies are valued, I realized the numbers weren't going to work for us. That tells me that you don't have any net income. You've told me you're unprofitable without telling me you're unprofitable, pretty much. They don't know where to begin. That's I'd like to maybe buy or sell, and then I have no idea what to do from that point. Cheap or greedy, that's usually on the buyer side, but it can be, both actually. Usually the buyer's cheap and the seller's greedy. So you kind of find that. I shouldn't say greedy. I did it for comic effect. It's more, but you have to find that middle ground. The seller, of course, wants the most for their business, and the buyer wants to pay the least and get the most benefit. A lot of owners can't give up control. Not that every M&A will result in a loss of control, but a lot of times, like when we buy companies, we do an asset purchase straight up. We don't do mergers. I call everything a merger, but we acquire. We do an asset purchase and we're in charge day one. That doesn't sit well with everybody. Not everybody is ready to give it up day one. We did a deal almost 3 years ago. I talked to the owner a couple months ago and they said, that first year was rough. We were not ready emotionally to give it up. I said, I know, I was there. I felt it. But I think you would agree with me that if you would have waited to sell your company at the end of that year, you would have made less money. They sold right at the end of 22. Sold right at the top. And they're like, no, perfect timing. We're happy, but we were not ready. So sometimes you do it even if you're not perfectly ready, because the market is timed for it. And that's buying and selling. Sometimes you're like, I'm not quite ready to buy, but right now is the time. The next 12 to 18 months, it is the time to buy. But you could also have an internal succession plan. And then you don't really need to worry about M&A as a strategy for your company to survive. It may be a growth strategy, but it doesn't necessarily have to mean like, oh, well, if I were to, get hit by a bus tomorrow, my company will just disintegrate. No, I have people in place for that. A couple factors to consider. M&As can range in size and scope. So don't look at M&A as, oh my gosh, I couldn't afford to do that. I've seen M&As being like 3 people. It roll-ins. Those are the easy ones where sometimes there's not even an exchange of money. It's just you structure a deal where a smaller brokerage can just come on into your office, and maybe that person gets an override on those agents, or maybe they're a manager or something like that you bring them in, and there's a purpose for it. It doesn't always have to be an exchange of money or this huge lift, like, oh, I'm taking on 10 offices and all this stuff. It can really fit your taste. The fastest path to grow your revenue and market share is a merger. I mean, you get an instant lift as soon as you sign that paper, because you get all that production into your company historically. And then for you personally, M&A can be a way to reach your goals. So from a seller's perspective, again, it's not just I'm retiring. I don't want to work anymore. So I bought companies from people in their late 40s, early 50s, because they're just like, I did this for a couple years. It was fun. I'd rather just sell real estate, or I want to focus on my Airbnb empire and just sell real estate on the side. I don't want to pay the bills anymore. Cool. We'll take it over. So it takes all kinds. Always be open to conversations, though, whether on the buyer side or the sell side. You just never know. Now, there's obviously some cases. I'm not saying talk to every single person that calls you, or you have to sit down and meet with them. But if there's any glimmer of possibility, you owe it to yourself to at least hear what the opportunity is, because it may spark an idea, or if nothing else, you get some great intel. When I was franchise sales, I would have brokers meet with me just because I was Coldwell Banker. And they told me that. I only agreed to meet with you because I wanted to hear what Coldwell Banker had to say. I wanted to hear what you guys were doing. Oh, okay. I mean, I didn't sell him a franchise, but that was why he met with me. I think entrepreneurs should be open to opportunity. It just kills me when people, I'm not interested. You don't even know what I'm asking. Like, I'm not going to sell you something. You can create a growth plan, and we're going to talk about this a little bit. Create a growth plan within your culture. You want that growth culture through your whole company. It's not just you. You want your agents and your staff on board, and I'll go into that in just a sec. And there are plenty of experts out there that can help you. So if you have a mind to grow with merger and acquisition, just reach out. There are I don't know how many M&A companies there are out there in the real estate space. It can't be more than a dozen. None. Okay. Well, your company, but yeah, there are a few of us out there. It's not a huge industry of merger and acquisition consultants. Let me just tell you, and if you're a business broker, I apologize. Don't use a business broker. They don't know what they're doing when it comes to selling real estate companies. Trust me. And they'll charge you an enormous amount of money. So I would stay away from a traditional business broker and find an actual M&A consultant, not an accountant. If you want to do evaluation, don't ask your CPA. They don't know what they're doing either. So if you need to know how much your company's worth, or you want to buy or sell, get somebody who's actually specialized in that. That's my soapbox. So why would you want to grow? So we've talked about the different metrics that we can look at. We've talked about the 3 major buckets, but then why? What's the reason? Well, there's a bunch of different reasons. Maybe one of these will resonate. Building for the future. That's a no-brainer. I'm going to have to go into that one. A change in your business goals. Stuff happens all the time. Family health issues, or we bought a beach house and we want to spend more time on the coast. That means I can't be shackled to my desk every day. I got to find a different plan. Great, good for you. I applaud it. Competitive pressures. There are a lot of companies right now that are collapsing under the pressure of the competition. Most of those, they popped up during COVID, had no idea how to function in a regular market, and they're just collapsing. And that's fine. It happens. I forget the failure rate of small businesses in general, but there's also a fairly high, thanks for coming. There's also a fairly high failure rate in brokerages over a certain period of time. Industry and market shifts. I can tell you there are people right now that are like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not changing the way I do my business because of this settlement or whatever. Like, I'm tired. I don't want to do this anymore. When COVID happened, we were, in my opinion, we were right about to hit a big bubble, a big, sell bump. There was going to be a big chunk of companies ready to sell. And then COVID hit and everybody started making all this money. So the can got kicked a couple years, and then those, well, I'm going to hang on for one more year. And then 23 kind of, so I'm sorry to say a lot of the sellers out there missed their chance to maximize their value. And now they're kind of looking at, well, I kind of still need to do something. I tell people all the time when it comes to P&Ls and stuff, I don't care what you did in 22 or 21 or 20. I don't even want to see them. It doesn't matter. It's an outlier. I don't care. It doesn't matter. There's accidental growth. I've heard crazy stories about, like, I wasn't planning on doing this. It just sort of happened. It fell in my lap. And next thing I know, I've got a second office and da-da-da-da-da. That can happen too. And then also to beat inflation. Honestly, we all feel the inflation right now. But if you are staying exactly static, let's say you did X million last year and you're doing the same X million this year, you're making less money this year than you did last year just because of inflation. Your dollar, everybody's dollar, is going a little less further every year because inflation goes up. So if nothing else, you just need to grow enough to keep ahead of inflation. Otherwise, it's just going to chip away. You may say, well, but the profit number was the same, but your spending power is not the same. So people don't really account for spending power. They just say, well, I made this much and I made this much and it's the same money. Well, I can tell you what I made last year versus the year before went less for, I have less spendable income year to year if I make the same amount of money. So those are some of the reasons on why you might want to grow. What you need to do, no matter what path you're going down, no matter what levers you're trying to pull, is you've got to create a culture within your company for growth. I know people talk about culture all the time, and it's kind of become this buzzword that people just ignore, like, oh, culture, whatever. A growth culture is an actual thing. Our agents know that we are a growth-minded company. Our staff know it. I mean, we'll joke anytime we get close to an M&A deal closing. Steve and I, my boss's name is Steve. Steve and I start, we're gonna be pretty busy in a couple of months. They know what that means. We don't tell them the particulars, but they know we want to grow. My managers know if you talk to a broker out in the industry, out in your market, and they mention something, have them call me, or have me call them. Tell me, I'm happy to talk to them. So you've got to let people know, whether it's, I want everyone in the company to do 2 more deals next year. Get everyone on board with that idea. Get that buy-in. There's a cool thing I learned recently, this perception is reality thing. I'll try to be brief with it. I was at a conference and they were explaining how, like, what is reality, the nature of reality. I'm not going to get into like Immanuel Kant or anything like that, but basically reality is a narrative that your brain constructs based on the input. This is a plastic, this is yellow, blue. My brain's telling me this stuff. My reality is that is yellow. But when there's a piece missing from that narrative, your brain will try to fill the gap. It tries to throw in information. Where does it go first? It goes to fear. So think about, like, when you're telling a story or someone, I hate this. Don't ever do this to me, any of you. Call me in 5 minutes. I have something really important to tell you. Don't do that to me. Because now I'm going to be spending the next 5 minutes trying to like figure out what it is and how worried I need to be. My brain is filling in that gap, that narrative gap. Something big is happening. I don't know what it is, and I have no other information to draw from. So we have to fill those gaps as much as we can, or the agents and the staff, they'll start filling those gaps in themselves, and they'll fill it in from a place of fear. If you're really quiet about stuff and you're super secretive, you may be preparing for a merger launch. You may have just bought 3 offices and you're getting ready to have this huge blowout party, but agents may be, oh my gosh, like something's happening. Oh, I bet we're closing an office, or oh my gosh, they will panic. If they don't know that you are growth minded, they'll start panicking on that kind of. I'm being extreme, obviously, just to make a point, but that perception is reality is very important. If you can control that narrative, if you can fill those gaps in, then you can control the reality that your agents are seeing. The reality is our company's growing, period, or whatever. We're trying to increase productivity. We're trying to do this. So WIFM, what's in it for me? That's the radio station that the agents listen to. Get their buy-in and show them the value of the growth. So agents, it's kind of a weird thing. Agents, generally speaking, don't want you to grow. Not that they're against it. They just feel like if you grow, then that's going to take time away from me. You won't be there for me anymore. We saw that in our company. When I walked in the door, we had 75 agents. Today, we have 260. Who do you think they hate for taking a Daddy Steve away from them? Me. They don't really hate me, but I do have agents that have very strong opinions about the fact that we are so much larger than we were. And they're like, oh, but we don't get to talk to Steve as much. Well, you have his cell phone, and plus, when you're never in the office anyway. So, I mean, if you want to talk to him, just pick up the phone. But you have to show them that value. We missed that step the first merger that we did, and they were like, we don't understand. Why are we doing this? And it took us like 6 months to finally get people to realize what a great thing this is. Now they're fine with it, but that first one was a little rough because they didn't see the vision. They just thought we were growing for growth's sake. Couple quick things. I know we're about at time, and I will be sending out the recording and the slides and a couple of goodies too to everybody. But there is false safety, what I call, in status quo. So people, oh, everything's good. I'm very happy. I'm very content with where my company is. You're complacent, most likely, and don't take anything I say with offense. I'm being funny, but that's an excuse. Contentment, complacency, it's just an excuse for not growing. As I said earlier, agents will leave you one way or the other. Do not trick yourself into thinking my people are so loyal, I don't have to worry about it. It doesn't take much to turn their head, especially if you're not watching. Doing business the same way you've always done it is not going to work anymore, especially because of the lawsuit. So if you are in that mindset of we'll just keep doing business as usual, it's not going to work. You're either going to run into some trouble, or your agents are going to be constantly fighting for their commission. It's just not a good thing. Just realize that the old days are done, and we have to adapt to a new way of doing business, and you'll be at a much better place. Your company has to be nurtured, and it needs attention. It's just like having a house plant. If you don't help it grow, it'll shrivel and die. So as I say, growth is painful, but so is watching your company shrivel and die. It's not fun all the time. I can tell you, having grown our company as much as I have, it's a lot of stress. I have a lot more gray hair than I used to, but it was worth it. I love doing it. It's a lot of fun overall. And it's just that feel good, like you've accomplished something. So what I would suggest is make a plan. If you want to get out of that status quo and you want to try to get into some kind of a growth plan, growth path, just pick 1 or 2 things. I'm not telling you have to do everything. Pick 1 or 2 metrics that you'd like to improve. You know what? I'd like to raise my retained company dollar by 5%, or I'd like to increase per person productivity by two units per person, whatever. Great. So then now that you know what you want to do, you can leverage the resources to try to do that. What are those resources? It depends. I don't know. Some of us are in franchise systems. There are resources we can draw from in that. There are mastermind groups out there, conferences. I'm a big conference person. Gathering of Eagles. It's now called The Gathering. Amazing for broker owners. Inman is more agent facing, I think, but like The Gathering, T360, some of those conferences are incredible for that broker level collaboration, team leader, talking about what are you doing for growth? What are you, how are you handling this situation? How do you guys deal with this? We talk about very high level stuff there. And it's very refreshing to just be able to talk business with other business people. Tell your story, tell it to your agents, tell it to the public, and tell it to yourself. You got to remember why you're doing this. The story is important from recruiting to production to M&As. Who are you? What do you do that nobody else does? What do you have that nobody else has? If it's, oh, we're great, we have a pretty office and we're all nice to each other, that's not enough for most people. So come up with something more compelling and then get help. There's nothing wrong with reaching out and asking for help, whether it's paid or whether it's volunteer. There are brokers all over the country that are more than willing to share whatever they can share with you, especially if they're not in competing markets. Like me, I don't care. Call me up. You need something? If I've got it, I'm happy to dig it up and give it to you. Doesn't bother me. You can't use it against me. You're not in my market. Now, I'm not going to give somebody down the road the same resource, but across the country, it's fine. So ask someone for help. Reach out and get to know them. It's a great way to network, and you'd be surprised at how many resources they can bring. So that's the end of the presentation. I'm happy to chat and do questions, answers, and all that, but I understand folks have schedules, so if you have to jump, feel free. You've now heard everything. As I said, I will send out the slide deck, the recording, and then a couple of like white papers and stuff that I think might be helpful. So I appreciate everybody being here. Thank you so much. And as I said, I'll hang around, and if anybody wants to chat, I'm here. Everyone's so quiet. Yeah, Chris. You're still muted. Margie's coming to help. I think I saw there was a mug or a t-shirt I saw that says you're muted. I'm like, what, I need that. Or you're still on mute. Thanks, Cindy.
Stephen, my question is, I assume that part of the reason you put this on is to generate business for yourself. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's at some point.
So
I imagine someone might need me.
Are you available to consult?
Yes, I am.
And how does that work? Do you have a fee base?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking, Chris. And I swear I didn't put him up to this. So yeah, so mergers and acquisitions, I have a different kind of a setup. It's more project based. But I do have consulting services. If you go to the website, they're all laid out there, but it's basically just a chunk of hours. And it's kind of whatever you want me to do. Like, obviously, if I can do it, it could be AI stuff. It could be growth. It could be agent productivity. I'm pretty much open to helping in any way I can. And if I don't feel like it's something that I can help with, then I would pass it off. Like if it was, it's not really my wheelhouse. Like if someone said, I need help, I need someone to recruit for me. Nope, I don't do that. Sorry. It's like working with buyers. Nope, I'm not doing that. So yeah, I have kind of blocks of consulting hours on a monthly basis, but I'm also open to custom stuff too. So pretty flexible.
No.
I just made some.
Any other questions or comments, or what are you guys hearing or seeing out there? Yeah, Margie.
I have that test flyer you sent out. I haven't had a chance to respond. You want me to show that to him?
Oh yeah, you can show Chris.
That Daryl and
Yeah,
Rich
I'm still
responded to.
She's
saw
required.
that.
I sent out my consulting package out to a few of my broker friends. They're like, "Tell me what you think of this." So
I'm sorry, I haven't had time to respond.
No,
yet,
no, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
This is the response.
Exactly.
I'll show it to him. I got it right here.
There you go. No, I would love to hear if you got, even if you're hearing stuff that is contradictory to what I'm saying, I would love to hear that, because obviously real estate is local. So I'm speaking kind of on a high level, or what we're seeing in the Mid-Atlantic, but it may not be that way across the country. So, happy to hear dissenting opinions as well.
And Chris, the reality is he loves coming to New Orleans.
Yeah. I do. I even went to go see them and a hurricane came. So I was there during Hurricane Francine.
Well, I
Just
think
so I
it's
could go.
a
I was there for a conference, but I came early.
for the charbroiled
see my friend.
oysters, right?
What was that?
David, it's for the charbroiled oysters, is
Oh,
all.
of course. Yes. Take me to Drago's and I
Yeah,
am
there you
yours
go.
for eternity. Oh, awesome. Well, I won't keep you guys. If you have any other thoughts, my contact information's on the screen. Most of you know how to get a hold of me anyway. But reach out with anything. And Cameron, regarding P&Ls, he helped out a ton. Thanks. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a total data nerd. So yeah, I love looking at P&Ls, and I'm losing my keyboard sitting on my standing desk. Yeah, I'm a total nerd when it comes to that. Every deal is different. That's what's so fun about it. It's like doing REOs. The process is similar, but every deal is a little bit different.
Thank you, Stephen. This has
Yeah,
been.
thank you guys. I
been
will.
very,
I'll see everybody
very good.
later and reach out if I can help.
Thank you.
Yep. Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.